everyone for coming today. We are doing another YDC Sununu Center awareness. It is imperative that every New Hampshire citizen understands what is going on with our YDC Sununu Center, because it's systemic and it's going to potentially bankrupt the state. And we have yet to have even a remedy to stop it from happening. So the reason I'm here today, and one of the reasons I'm running for Executive Council District 4, is that we have children. We have about 1,200 children on average that are in state custody, and we don't have enough foster homes for them. So 2/3 of them on average end up in group homes, and oftentimes out-of-state group homes, and in some occasions in our youth detention centers. We have victims here today in the crowd that were put in the YDC Center, not because they were a juvenile delinquent. These children have been labeled as criminals and that they deserve to be treated poorly. But the truth is, because of capacity issues, we have innocent children that simply didn't have placement to go anywhere else. And now we know we've got civil rights disability documentation from 2007 to 2009, authored by our state Senator Whitley, that spoke to the abuse of what was going on with these children. We have 10 men that were arrested and indicted, but they're out with ankle bracelets. They haven't spent a day in jail. And they've pushed their trials back to 2026. One of them recently, 80 years old, too old to now stand trial. So when the victims have a settlement with the state that's approved $100 million and looking to increase that dollar amount, and yet not one person has done a day in jail, the victims have the opportunity to sign a form to say, I'll just take $1 million and walk away from the times I was sodomized and raped under state custody. But you know what they're doing instead? They're heroes. And I'll tell you why they're heroes. Because I just talked to a couple of them today. And I said, if you had a magic wand, if you could ask for one thing after everything you've gone through, what would it be? And you know what her answer was? This was a young lady who was raped and impregnated before she was 12 by the guards, okay? And then forced to be taken to get stitches and forced to have an abortion. That is this young lady's story. And when I asked her, what would you want? What do you want? She's like, I want to make sure there's no child going to bed tonight in New Hampshire with the horror and the hell that I went through. And you know what the truth is? There's still no remedy. Jason, who's a state rep, he'll be talking, I believe, he just put in front of all of our legislators a piece of legislation that if you're a state elected official, you should be able to go in and do an audit of any of our public facilities, whether it be a nursing home, a school, a youth detention center, a group home, and you should be able to ask those people, do you feel safe and do you feel taken care of? And do you know we didn't have enough votes to pass that piece of legislation? We have a roll call, and I'll be sharing with you with the names of the people that said no, because that has got to change. Do you understand we are spending $356 on average a day for individuals who should be getting state care? And yet we're getting people who are not being hydrated, people are not being fed, people are laying in feces in our nursing homes, our children are being abused. As a watchdog, which is the job description of Executive Council, this is my passion. This is why I feel I need to be in this seat. For those that don't know me, I spent 10 years trying to rescue 2 little boys so that they would not end up being victims. I spent 20 years in finance doing contract work. The Executive Council is the one the governor will nominate, but it is the Executive Council that will approve who are judges, who's our AG. If we want integrity back in our court system, we the people from the ground up must rise. Nobody here is going to do it. There's too much liability for them. We have the town manager of Londonderry. He was the director of policy and procedure at DCYF at the height of the abuse. We have Kelly Ayotte, who is running for governor, who was the AG. She said she didn't know what was going on. She didn't know this was happening. Okay, if that's the case, which I find very hard to believe, if that's the case, she's very derelict in her duties. And if you didn't know what was going on in your shop when it came to children and elderly being abused to this extent, and you're not pushing to get these 10 men tried before 2026 while they're still able to hold trial and see some sort of justice, And I gotta tell you, there's a lot more than 10 people that should have been arrested. If you listen to the story and you watch the trial in WMUR, the lead rapist abuser was the head of the state employees union. And he intimidated every state employee to sit down and let him do what he wanted to do. The corruption is so bad that the voices have been silenced. But now you know. And because you know, it's your job to do something. It's my job to do something. There's a child who's going to sleep tonight who's praying that someone will step up, that someone will be their voice, that someone will stop this from happening. And as taxpayers, this last civil suit, $38 million, they're trying to say, oh, it's just $400,000 per incident, because they'd rather they just sign the paper and go away, right? It wasn't just one incident. It was night after night after night after night. And that young man that went through that civil case and went through hell and back and was told that he had mental health issues, they're going to disparage, minimize this cohort of people, of victims. But yet not one of them is advocating that these trials be brought forward and happen, versus, and instead they're just pushing it out, pushing it out, pushing it out, because they just want it to go away. Well, you know what? It's not going to go away when we still have children that are at risk right now. These cases are going to continue. And it's not just New Hampshire, it's across the country that this is happening. New Hampshire can be the one to set the precedent. Open up the windows. Let the light shine in. Let's do one thing for these victims. Let's make sure we put a mechanism in place to audit and make sure the children are safe. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming out. Please engage. Please watch the WMUR trial from start to finish if you can. If you have questions, I need you to reach out. Leah Cushman is here. She's been a huge advocate for DHHS and children. And what are we doing? We are so far away from our Constitution, guys. But I'll let Leah speak to that. And I just want to appreciate all of you. And for the victims, I wish I could have saved you. I wish I could have stopped it for you. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that our culture is okay with an 80-year-old laying in feces and having his skin fall apart, or having a 12-year-old raped. I am sorry that we think that we could just go about our business and not say that it's enough. But it's time to say enough is enough. You look at your paycheck, they're taxing us to death, and that money is going to harm. When will we stand? It doesn't need to be complicated. We just need to do what we need to do, and that's to assemble and to get out there and decide we are going to make a change. God bless each and every one of you, and thank you for coming.
Leah, I believe, right? I'm just going to pay no attention. I'm going to put the battery in.
Hi everybody, I'm Leah Cushman.
Stand behind the things you're on video.
Behind the podium.
Perfect.
My name's Leah Cushman. My name is Leah Cushman. I'm a representative from where. Hello, sir.
No, you're fine.
Okay. I never knew anything about any of this until less than a year ago, really. It started with a local couple to me, and then another gentleman dealing with DCYF, and then prosecutors, and it just due process was not there. And then I basically asked around and said, if you've been having similar issues, let me know. So I'm here for New Hampshire family justice. That's what I'm here for. And as far as like YDC goes, I'll wait until he goes by. You know, there's so much to know about that, and none of that is going to get fixed until we also fix DCYF and family court and what's going on in the AG's office and our law enforcement. So I came into this from the DCYF side and the family court side of things, just noticing that, you know, DCYF was making arbitrary decisions over whether parents could keep their kids. They would be the judge and jury when it came to accusations against parents. And so I was given notices by some of the people that was outlining exactly how that violates the Constitution, both within DCYF and family court. There's no trial by jury. I mean, Part 1, Article 15 of the New Hampshire State Constitution says, before any of your rights or liberty interests are taken from you, you need to have a trial by jury of your peers or the law of the land. That means due process, as has been encoded, enshrined in common law in the our system of jurisprudence since before this nation was formed. So none of that was being done. I asked the speaker in October of 2023 to form a committee to investigate what was going on with due process with DCYF, and with the understanding that there is an entanglement between DCYF and family court because they one works with the other to make all of this happen. And they're taking, on one hand, they're taking kids from families, from parents who have never been charged with a crime and never had their real day in court, in a court of record, a real court of law. And then on the other hand, they're leaving kids, and they're being soft on crime, leaving kids in abusive situations, real abusive situations, and they just carry them through this long court process because the longer that they're in there, the more money it generates. There's some federal incentives and immunities in federal law that are driving the way that they do things. So I was just starting to dig into that, and then so I asked the speaker for this committee. He dragged his feet for months. Finally, I conceded on things that I was asking, like who would be on it, you know, the makeup of it, what committees that the people who would be on it would be from. He loaded it with obstructionists, and then when we finally had our first meeting, it was organizational, that went fine. Second meeting, I used my granted authority as a legislator to use the best of my ability to get answers. And I started by saying, we're going to have all of this testimony under oath. Because the departments, they constantly come in and lie to us. They withhold information from us in the House. And I wanted it to be known that this is serious, and you're going to be expected to be truthful here. And if you're not, you might be held accountable if you knowingly misrepresent the facts. And so halfway through gathering testimony from members of the public in that meeting, I got an email from the speaker saying, speaker's guidance, he asks that you no longer administer oaths. And so I paused everything. I called a caucus. I asked my fellow representatives on the committee, Republicans, what should I do? I got some various answers from them, and I decided I'm going to continue. I sent my vice chair, Representative Erica Leon, who I trusted completely, up to talk to the speaker and just say, we're going to continue today and we'll come up and discuss this after, because it didn't make sense to me. And it would make the testimony kind of lopsided if we had some under oath and some not. So she went up, she came back down, and she said to me, he said, if you don't stop with the oaths, he's going to dissolve the committee. So over me, you know, ensuring sworn testimony and truthfulness, he was going to stop this investigation for the people. And so I was absolutely floored. I went up there with Representative J.D. Bernardi afterward. We had a conversation. He said, if you don't stop, I'm going to dissolve the committee. I said, why? He gave me all of these answers that didn't hold water. Eventually, that was Monday, by Friday, he announced that I was removed, and he said that I had said that we should dissolve the committee if he wasn't going to let me do oaths, which was a lie. And I went, I blew the whistle. And I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. If we're trying to dig to the bottom of things where people are being harmed, the truth needs to come out, and we need to uphold our oath. We swore to protect the people's rights to the best of our ability. And he actually broke the law by taking me off that committee. There is a statute that says if you put the people that a public servant or the public servant at a disadvantage for using their discretion, then you've committed a crime. And you know, I haven't pursued that yet. Will our AG be useful in that? I doubt it. So what I can do is I can tell people what's going on. I'm not going to be quiet anymore. everyone needs to know this is, you know, I could tell in my conversation with him there was something. It's either, and I could speculate, you know, it's either they wanted a neat little session with no controversy so they could say, you know, we got our little goals accomplished, clean and neat, or they are beholden to somebody for a backroom deal, or you know, or they're complicit. I don't know. You know, this is all speculation. But whatever it is, they're more concerned with their own interests than the people's, who they swore to defend. So I'm here for New Hampshire family justice on all sides of this, from when it comes to accusations against families that they can't take care of their kids and that they can't have their kids, to when they bring them to DCYF and have that investigation and that unconstitutional inside administrative tribunal where they make a finding of, yes, you abused or you didn't. You don't even get notice to show up at that. I mean, the whole process is totally unconstitutional. The Supreme Court of the United States is catching on. SEC versus Jarchese, they're looking at right now, and it talks about these administrative tribunals that bypass due process as required by the Constitution. So all of this comes down to they're putting the people in leadership in this state are putting their priorities over the people and over their oath to protect the people. So we, a group of activists and advocates have been meeting legislators and trying to figure out next moves. We're forming an organization right now called New Hampshire Family Justice. We are starting a petition, and there's going to be a motion on the floor next week during the last House session, and there's going to be a lot of truth shared on the House floor. So I hope you'll all tune into that and keep an eye out for the petition that's going to demand that the House, rather than leadership, who is using their gatekeeping abilities to stop real investigation using the full... I got laughed at when I suggested if DCYF doesn't come in that we subpoena them. If the family court judges didn't want to come in, we subpoena them. Steve Smith laughed at me, as if that was a preposterous thing to use our granted authority to actually investigate. They think this is a joke. So we need to go around them. We need to appeal to the House itself and go right around the gatekeepers. The House needs to take a vote on whether they're willing to do this and give a committee the full investigative power that they're granted by the people, including subpoena, including administering oaths, and do a real investigation. Because that's within our power. We're supposed to be a check and balance on these other branches and on the agencies that we created. It's a joke to them that we even are able to go in and look at documents and ask questions and demand answers. We're supposed to just sit and play nice. And, you know, these people are under our authority. It's our job. It's our duty. So next week, tune in for that. There will be a petition going around for the legislature to form that committee without the speaker being able to meddle. And hopefully, if we can't get it passed, at least we get a roll call and we galvanize this issue for the fall, for the election. Not only the elections for state offices, but the speaker's election, because we need a speaker of the House who's willing to use the authority of the House to fight for the people and bring justice for all of these victims of YDC and DCYF and the family courts and all of these families. Thank you. Woo! Thank you all for being here. God bless you.
Thank you.
All right, who's next? Mr. Gerhardt, I believe.
Oh, yeah? I don't know.
Step up to the microphone, sir.
Ashley. Ashley?
Oh, is it Ashley? Ashley, you ready?
Hey, Frank.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of feedback.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
I don't know how you get rid of that. It's not
I
horrible.
think it's fine. It's just, you just got to talk real close to the microphone.
Yep. Just yeah, move from like the back
Watch
side.
the legs.
How about this so you can read it, right? Bring it kind of like this one so she
Yeah,
can
I
see
have
it
to
from the
read
side.
these.
Here,
Oh,
you
you
get in the
have to
middle.
read it.
Yeah.
I'll move it.
Oh, I'm pretty sure.
Do a check and find the sweet spot on the mic.
Let me grab a shirt.
what's going on with yeah, I don't know if this charger's working, but
The USB. All right.
we still got 50%.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. So, I'm here in representation of my significant other. His name is Charles Glenn. You might not know him or have heard of him. He's John Doe number 9 in the YDC lawsuit. This whole idea kind of stemmed from him last year, and it took off when he called Frank and Therese, and everyone has been supportive. We held our first rally here last year on August 25th, 2023. We had a good turnout, a lot of victims, a lot of representatives, state reps. It did make a lot of news media outlets. Unfortunately, the state and the lawyers have kind of started to try to deter victims from showing up to these rallies in fear of retaliation, or it could mess them up at trial. So I'm here to speak on behalf of him. I have a speech written out, bear with me. I'm going to read it. And more importantly, this is his sister, Shalina Glenn. His daughter is here as well. Her significant other, Amy, is his sister's wife. His nephew, Junior, is here.
Hold the mic closer.
Can you hold this? So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ashley George, and I am here in representation of my significant other, Charles Glenn. We manage the group on Facebook called Real Just Us. We thank you all for coming today. This is for the children, all children, not just our own. You know the horrific facts of physical abuse, sexual abuse, broken bones, and beatings by staff on children who are housed in state custody. These staff were and are government actors, but today is not our day to relive it. Today is our day to heal. Today is our day to expose the problems, and today is a day to create a way to fix them. Why must the taxpayers suffer for the corruption, culpability of the state actors? Yes, money will help, but it is not the solution. It will not solve the Kelly Ayotte or John Stevens problem. In a criminal or civil context, we have a theory. It's called imputed knowledge and imputed duty. It is not enough for Kelly Ayotte, the head of the New Hampshire Attorney General's office between 2004 to 2009, to say she didn't know kids were being beaten, kids were being raped. It is not enough for John Stevens, the head of DHHS during 2003 to 2007, to say he didn't know. And if you didn't know, you were derelict in your duties, you were negligent in your duties, you may have even been reckless in your duties. And I'm going to show you why. RSA 76 draws out the responsibilities of the New Hampshire Attorney Generals. Their powers and duties as state attorney. The Attorney General shall act as an attorney for the state in all criminal and civil cases, in the Supreme Court in which the state is interested, and in the prosecution of persons accused of crimes punishable with death or imprisonment for life. The Attorney General shall have and exercise general supervision of the criminal cases pending before the Supreme and Superior Courts of the state. And with the aid of the county attorneys, the Attorney General shall enforce the criminal laws of the state. They didn't do that. RSA 711. Nothing herein contained shall relieve any officer or person of any duty prescribed by law relative to the enforcement of any criminal law, but such officer or person in the enforcement of such law. shall be subject to the control of the Attorney General whenever, in the discretion of the latter, he shall see fit to exercise the same. RSA 734. The county attorney of each county shall be under the direction of the Attorney General, and in the absence of the latter, he or she shall perform all the duties of the Attorney General's office for the county. If no other representation is provided under the direction of the county commissioners, he or she shall prosecute or defend any suit in which the county is interested. The county attorney shall tax all costs arising in state or county suits in his or her county for the consideration of the court. The Disability Rights Center found, this was while Ayotte and John Stevens were in office, found 42% of youth reviewed were subject to restraints during their stay at the Sununu Youth Services Center. Staff used excessive force in 53% of the incidents reviewed. Youth were injured in at least 39% of the incidents reviewed. 45% of the incidents reviewed involved use of force or restraint that was not justified by the situation. Staff regularly used dangerous restraint techniques to control youth behavior. 19% of the restraints involved a takedown restraint, and 20% of the restraints involved a floor or bed restraint. It is also likely that over half of the restraint incidents at Sununu Youth Services Center involved a prone restraint, a dangerous practice that exposes youth to an unreasonable risk of death or injury. And I want you guys to know that that is all off the Disability Rights Report that would have been submitted to the AG's office, and nobody did anything. This investigation from Disability Rights Center started in 2000 and didn't end until 2010. The entire time that John Stevens and Kelly Ayotte were in their positions for the state of New Hampshire. It was incumbent upon them to investigate incidents of abuse and uphold the laws in this state. Here we are today. It is our understanding that hundreds of children were raped and beaten. The only question is, the only question is, were they derelict in their duty, negligent in their duty, or did they just recklessly disregard the health and safety of hundreds of children? The facts were laid out clearly and concisely in the David Meehan trial. Rochelle Edmark's testimony and the others that testified, they not only reported and referred lots of cases for criminal action, and no actions were taken by the Manchester Police, State Police, county attorneys, and finally the one tasked with upholding the laws of the state, our attorney generals. Systemic abuse runs rampant in our state institutions. In the New Hampshire State Hospital, multiple patients have been killed throughout the years. Most recently, Jason Roth and Philip Borkuck. Multiple residents in our county corrections and New Hampshire state prisons have been beaten and murdered, as well as hundreds being raped, only for the evidence to be suppressed and those who speak up to be retaliated against. The Attorney General's Office and DHHS are to blame for these horrific acts, for not implementing and upholding a zero tolerance for abuse policy, and instead suppressing and representing state actors who perform criminal acts. And also shame on the New Hampshire civil attorneys who represent the Bar Association for not challenging the Attorney General's office when they're derelict in their duties due to their political affiliation, nepotism, and non-adversarial complacency. I'd ask that we push to have representatives in our state that have zero tolerance for the abuse that has occurred, such as Teresa that's running for executive council now. And don't let the honors of the past, the horrors of the past, become our future. Thank you very much.
You're up next, I believe.
It was Jay Nude, but he's not.
Are you speaking in place of Jay?
Yeah, I'm still here. No, nothing I can add.
Okay. Jason Gerhardt, step up to the mic.
All right. All right, thank you, everybody. Okay, this is weird mic. So I am a state representative, Northfield Franklin. But more importantly for this conversation, I spent 12 and a half years in federal prison for helping an elderly couple resist the federal government over some fraudulent income tax stuff. There is no law that requires you to pay the tax on federal income, but we can talk about that another time, because we do need to defund these scumbags. That's something we need to work on. Yeah. But what I want to talk about right now, most recent history, last Thursday, well, Thursday before actually, I put a motion in to suspend the rules so a new piece of new legislation could be introduced to allow state general court members to inspect any state facility, which makes sense since I'm supposedly signing money to these institutions. I should know how this money is being spent or stolen or diverted, I think that's the right way to say. So the vote ended up being 216 no, but 148 said yes, which is pretty impressive considering I just did it on the spur of the moment because just the other day I was told by the county jail I could not be a religious volunteer in Merrimack County Jail because I'm not 5 years past probation. I actually was elected while on federal probation, but for some reason I'm not allowed to talk to the inmates in our county jails and find out what's going on, because this is not going to stop unless we actually know what's happening inside of these facilities. I think that should be pretty self-evident. We have the state prison just down the road, and I've heard some horror stories about the psychiatric unit. Frank has a bunch on deck, but we all know there's some funky stuff going on. There's just no doubt about it. Additionally, I want to segue into something else real quick. I think it's important that we remember forgiveness is an essential element in this. I know everyone's angry at these state actors, but at the same time, we have to remember that some of the officers in these institutions are actually not bad people. So some of them right now have been fired from the state prison. One of them reached out to the state reps. And the ones that are actually raising their voices against corruption have been fired, which I think is extremely problematic since, for instance, the state reps, the Criminal Justice Committee did a tour of the state prison at the beginning of their term. And I know some of the people on the committee, and they didn't talk to one inmate. How do you do a tour of a prison and not talk to one inmate? I don't even care if you got the brown nose brigade they bring up. You know, the inmates that are on the take and they, oh, here, march over here and show them how great it is. Even if you got the brown nosers, though, at least they have some inkling of what's happening. But the idea you just talk to COs, and probably not even COs, probably just talk to the administration. So, I think we need to reach out to some of these not bad officers and administration people that are actually useful and make some inroads so we can find out what's going on, and also working with our state reps that are not horrible people, and just kind of creating an information network, because I understand this happened and we want these people to receive justice, but I don't think we're doing anything to stop it from happening in the future because the taxpayers are the one that are picking up the check on this. So there's no real incentive for anything to change. You know, nobody higher up than these guys is actually getting punished. Everybody knew what was going on. I mean, it's pretty obvious. So it's a little bit of frustration I'm up here with, but on another positive note, in my mind, I'm actually going to be running for Merrimack County Sheriff. I think it's worthwhile, and the sheriff has the ability to. The sheriff is the highest law enforcement entity in the county, and their power has not been exercised, especially in New Hampshire, for as far as I can remember. But there's just a lot of things that need to change, and we got to start calling out the people that are corrupt. And I'm willing to do it because, well, whatever, you know. It's better than this. This pays $100 a year. The sheriff's $130,000 a year. So if you guys want to sign up, make sure you get in this last week. But yeah, just I don't know how to explain it. I don't want everybody to get so discouraged with all this stuff. I understand people have been harmed, and I get it. But just being inside myself, when people have you demoralized and just feeling hopeless, that's how they win. They just got you feeling, oh, you can't change anything, and the only change you can have is if you go through our gatekeepers. And you know, I'm going to tell you right now, there's some good reps that spoke today. Nothing against them, but this institution is not going to help us. It's just not. There's too many people that are too entrenched, and they have too many skeletons in their closet. Not saying we should not put good people in here, but we got to start thinking about attacking this from different angles. County sheriff is one, but even local office and civil disobedience, Frank. Sure. So, all right, thank you everybody. And if anybody has any questions about that stuff, let me know. All right, appreciate it.
Woo! Thanks, buddy. Thank you, Jason. And I want to thank everybody else who spoke. I'm just going to try to wrap it up real quick. I do have a solution that I've been thinking about, and that is I don't think the state should be involved in anything but oversight when it comes to any of this stuff. There are plenty of nonprofits, and at this point, the 15 agencies that are implicated, not just YDC, in all the rampant abuse, it's every single one that was contracted with the Maximus contract, the same Maximus contract that had to do with all the COVID-19 vaccine, track and trace database, VaxVan, all that stuff, Vax ID. So we're getting a little windstorm here. And the state should have nothing but oversight. And if they only had oversight over private entities that were helping these children, then they couldn't have any culpability, and the taxpayer won't be liable for anything that happens. And when it happens, it gets shut down, and those people are tried and taken care of and made an example of. Because when the state has their hands in the coffer and all their friends are profiting off these contracts and these little different pop-up things to take care of all these kids, and that care is not care. We know what it was. It was rampant rape, torture, physical, sexual, psychological abuse, isolation. One kid did something wrong, they all got punished. And then what they do, they said, hey, you didn't like that, did you? Well, it was so-and-so's fault. Maybe you should do something about it. And then that kid gets the shit kicked out of him by other kids. They even got some of the juvenile, we call them inmates, right? Because that's how they were treated. We had orange jumpsuits in King Cottage. I was in King Cottage in 1996. I went to school handcuffed to another kid. And then they took the handcuffs off when we got into school. Okay? They groomed us to become prisoners and criminals. All right? So they also knew, we've heard from an ombudsman, that anyone who had abuse trauma history on their file and they made a complaint, it automatically got labeled as uncredible and it was not investigated further. And that is how they perpetuated this thing and allowed the staff members to continue the abuse, right? The staff members knew exactly who they could prey on because they knew that they would get the, oh, I can get after this kid, nobody gonna believe him. You're all bad little bastards. Gordon MacDonald argued for compulsory negligence. He said that all the cases should be dismissed for compulsory negligence. What does that mean? It means the state was forced to be negligent, and everything that happened to these little bastards, they deserved it and they caused it themselves. And we know that's not true. I interviewed Adam Cardano. He was a foster kid who was stuck in King Cottage maximum security because they had nowhere else to put him. His parents died. And what happened? He was abused. He was forced to perform fellatio on a staff member, and then that same staff member said, I want to be his foster parent. And what happened? The same case manager that Adam reported it to said, okay, sure, but you don't have the license yet, so as long as you start to take the classes, we'll approve it before you have the license to be a foster parent. And that's what happened. And once he got in this guy's house, the rape continued on. That guy also adopted a kid from like South America or whatever, and when they raided his house and found videos of the abuse, that kid said he was abusing me as well. And there's been no investigation. The feds should be all over this thing. This is the biggest scandal in the history of this state, possibly in the history of this country. It's right up there with the Catholic Church abuse case, which brings up David Vincenzo, former U.S. attorney and one of the lawyers on the case for the victims. He actually represented the abusers in the Catholic priest case. He defended the abusers in the Catholic priest case. He also endorsed Kelly Ayotte, and she endorsed him. And you know what else he did? This past week, he went to some of our survivors who have been here and got behind them and planted bugs in their ears and said, you can't go to that rally. They're going to use it against you. Nobody should show up. You're not going to get a penny if you show up. So that's why we have not as many of our survivors here today, but we still have a phenomenal crowd out here to support and shut this thing down. We need, and this is the other thing, this is not just New Hampshire. This is not unique to New Hampshire. There have been juvenile facilities in Florida and Georgia. They find mass graves, unmarked graves. I think that the grounds of YDC need to be searched with cadaver dogs and sonar equipment for all these runaways that disappeared, that never get heard from again. 18, all the files get destroyed. We don't know what is really going on. And so we need some sort of oversight, like Jason Gerhardt said. Sheriff needs to get involved. We need to have a committee like Leah Cushman tried to do. But what do? They shut it down. They won't let it happen. They don't want it. They can't allow it, because if there was a real investigation, none of them would get elected again. Nobody even knows about this case. I've talked to all kinds of supposed elected officials. Never heard of it. Don't know. Oh, wow. Oh, that's crazy. Never heard of it. Who are you? Who are you and what are you doing? Nothing. Pandering for donations, pretending to be a Christian, pretending to be this, pretending to be that, just to get to where you want to be. And we're done with it. We're done with it. We'll be outside Kelly Ayotte's house if we have to. Better believe that. Sununu, you can tell her, get ready. The security, I saw Sununu's security just retired. They got some fresh ones coming. Do your homework. Fuck around and find out about me. I represent YDC Victims Advocate. And I fuck around with real justice. And we're coming. And we're going to expose this situation. One way or the other, with or without the media, with or without WMUR. I appreciate Union Leader is here. Shout out to Kevin Landergan. Hopefully he writes a good one on this. The only way it's going to end is if we get people talking about it and asking questions and looking into it. And that time is now. I want to thank you all for coming out. And so we have a bonus. We have a bonus speaker. His name is Chris King, and we're going to try to make this work.
All right, Chris, go ahead. Chris, can you hear me?
Is it on speaker?
Yeah.
Might not work. Oh, and we will be doing another one of these on the 13th. Because Kelly Ayotte heard we were going to be here, so she rescheduled. And we're going to be here to see her and talk to all her constituents and make sure the record is clear. There's no running, there's no hiding. Like I said, we'll be outside your house. We can't hear Chris, so I'll tell him.
I'll get his number and we'll figure something out and get something on the video. Okay, all right.
So yeah. That's it. If there is anybody else that wants to come up last minute, we still got a little bit of battery power. We got like 25% on the thing. If anyone wants to come up and say something, feel inspired. All right. Otherwise, it's a hot and humid day here. We're going to start wrapping up. And yeah, thank you all so much. Let's do it. Talk to your friends. Spread the word. Go to the Facebook page. Share the event. Make sure you check into the event, please. And post all your pictures there and stuff. I am going to be posting the videos and the pictures to the YDC Victims Advocate page. And the Real Just Us page as well. You can see I always tag that. So when you see that in blue, hit the Real Just Us. Go follow Charlie. I'm actually going to be doing some interviews from prison with him. I'll record them and put them up on my YouTube and on the page as well. Because he has a lot of great insight into all this. He was there in YDC before I got there. He was there. He was like the welcoming committee, we could say. And yeah, so that's that. So stay tuned for these interviews that I'm going to be doing with Charlie. They're going to be fire, I'm telling you. So thank you all. Take it easy. Charles wants to say something.
Hey. You're a little, well, I'm not even up there yet.
Oh my God, it's so hot. see if the mic picks it up, Charlie.
In here?
Speak loud.
Yeah.
He said, thank y'all for coming out. And remember, for any state official who said they didn't know, they had to do audits. They had to do audits to get funding. Who was lying to say everything was okay so that they could get the federal money? Because that is what it's all about. It's all about getting that federal money and passing it around to your friends and not doing nothing with it. Okay? Anything else, buddy? He says, thank y'all, I love y'all.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon. Yep.
All right, thanks again, everybody. It's over for real. Woo!